For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Gotta say, it's feeling good. This is the last hour of the week. We're taking a week vacation next week. This is winding things down. I got a little senioritis setting in here for the final hour. So we're going to chat with some other people. Chris Blair in 15 minutes, Preston Guy, TigerBait.com joins us on Fridays. We're off tomorrow. Good enough to move up a day to Thursday. Preston, thank you, sir. How are you?
Hey, Hunt. Thanks for fixing me in on a rare Thursday appearance.
Rare Thursday appearance. I mean, I used to go on Moscona's show every Friday in a previous life, and, just good. Friday's always got good vibes. I'm not saying that Thursday's a bad day, but, this feels like a Friday, so you ought to feel good.
I'm your vibe guy, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. I know when I'm talking to you, I'm almost done with work, so that's a good thing. All right, you were in Tiger Stadium on Saturday. I'll leave it open-ended for you, and then we'll dive in with whatever it is that piques your interest. But what'd you see?
Open-ended. Man, isn't it sad that they didn't give these fans at least a semblance of a scrimmage? I'm one of the probably handful of spring football lovers out there, and, you're a football team. Your job is to entertain. Go entertain, So while there's probably a lot of people who say they don't care, do what you think helps make the team win the best, I don't think that doing a practice versus a more of a show-style scrimmage is going to result in losing a game or not next season. So that's probably my biggest takeaway is, gosh darn! In fact, I asked Coach Kelly in the post-practice presser. I asked him about if he'd be open to scrimmaging against another team as a spring game, and he basically, as close to a direct answer as you're going to get out of him on something. Yes, he would prefer that. So that's my biggest takeaway. But we'll go into the actual field of things. Those edge rushers are big, mean, and nasty, and I don't know that this offensive line is up to the task yet of blocking anybody as good as LSU's defensive end.
I agree. It was one of my biggest takeaways from the day, and I actually thought the defense as a whole played pretty well. I thought they were pretty good in the red zone unless Juwan Johnson had the ball. And so I thought that was an encouraging thing. I mean, obviously every play, if one team does something really good, the other team had something bad happen to them. But I thought on the whole, the defense won the day, and I'm quite frankly okay with that based on what we've watched the last 2 years.
I believe it's probably been since 2018 that you're looking at these practices and the defense had the upper hand. Now, I'm not going to say that the defense has never been on par, but they clearly have the upper hand. And the last time I remember that would be 2018 when Joe Burrow was coming in and, frankly, not learning the offense in 30 days. That's basically what happened with Joe Burrow. And then before that, I don't know if you remember the spring game of 2018, but it was basically the biggest crap show and the biggest fan freak out I remember in recent memories as people thought Justin McMillan was about to be the starting quarterback based on what they saw.
Let's talk about Juwan Johnson. They showed a lot of him in the red zone. Brian Kelly talked about turning the cameras off before that. What'd you think?
I think the combination of LSU's red zone woes both last year and what we saw during this spring and the talent skill set that Juwan Johnson brings, I think he's earned himself a short yardage package. I mean, he's a full-bodied runner out there. He will lower a shoulder and run you over. He's also dynamic and he's got speed. And, like Brian Kelly said, in these short yardage situations, he'll be able to throw the ball well enough in these short yards. It's usually a simple situation of, hey, look, they're going to be running man cover zero coverage. If that guy's open, throw it to him. If not, tuck it and run it. It's not like a complex full wide receiver tree he has to memorize. So I definitely think he's earned a spot situationally. And look, a situational red zone short yardage quarterback can certainly make a huge deal in your offense in terms of actually moving the change after your offense has been pretty good. You get 3 first downs and you get stopped on 3rd and 1, drive over. Well, all of a sudden this guy can really change the outlook of your entire game based on that. But then you have to wonder, is Juwan Johnson too talented to be used as basically a 2006 Tim Tebow?
And that's kind of what it looks like he is at this point right now. Speaking of usage, how much is Harlem Berry going to get in the fall?
A lot. And Brian Kelly addressed that in the post-practice presser. Whether he starts or not, that's not as big a deal. It's whether you're in the rotating lineup of playing. Now, I'll be interested to see who gets the second snaps. I'm fairly certain it'll be Caden Durham who gets your first snaps. In terms of being a complete back, blocking, being able to break a tackle, all that jazz, I would be shocked if Caden Durham's not your most complete player. But Harlem Berry looks sharp in a lot of ways. By the way, in the back end portion of practice where tackling was allowed, Caleb Jackson also looked sharp, by the way. He looked like a bruiser out there.
Yeah.
So it'll be a nice question to see who gets that second rep. Will it be Harlem Berry? Will it be Caleb Jackson? Personally, I think Harlem Berry at times looks like your best back. I think he's definitely your best receiver. Now, Harlem Berry is not as fast as Caden Durham. At least I don't think he is in terms of track speed. But Harlem Berry looks – he might be better at acceleration than he might get to top speed a little quicker than Caden Durham because he glides very well. He's very nimble, very smooth, and can make a lot of plays happen for you. Look, I think it'll probably I will predict that might be one of LSU's, Dan's biggest early frustrations is how long it takes to get him on the field because I think he's going to continue to flash excellence, but it takes a while to earn trust and to frankly learn the offense and break in, as we saw with Caden Durham last year. Yeah,
I'm with you on Berry gliding. When you watch him and kind of cut through, and Brian Kelly talked about his natural running of the football, as he termed it. He's a joy to watch when he gets out in some space. Seems like, roundly speaking, that safety is among the biggest question marks when you talk to people about the team. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it probably is. Tamarcus Cooley makes you feel a lot better. And even guys like Taviano played a lot better. Maybe not so much in coverage skills. We've seen him struggle on one-on-ones throughout the spring. But, I mean, he was all over the place making tackles in the game. So that's certainly encouraging from that standpoint. I wouldn't be surprised if they look into a player for this portal here. They might not. But if they did, they'd probably look for a safety. Overall, the biggest we talked about ends being the biggest standout to me was how returning players got first priority all spring for all the returning positions, right? And that is just consistently across the field, man. Offensive line, defense, everywhere. They really leaned heavily on their returning players rather than the transfer guys. So I would look and see if in fall camp, I think they have enough bodies at corner probably to even spare. Do one of those corners slide over and take reps at safety? Because they certainly have guys capable. I mean, have you seen Mansour Delane's film? That guy will lower a shoulder and tackle you. So could he play safety? Absolutely, he could play safety. But I'm just thinking which one of them. I think one of them will have to do it and have to do it play well if they don't add a safety.
Last one here. You have any Michael Van Buren thoughts? We saw a good bit of him on Saturday.
Yeah, he has flashes where you see that arm, man. He's got a rifle. But there's just other times where he'll sail a guy or he'll miss this here. I think a lot of what you see with that inconsistency, we're talking about a 5'11" quarterback, okay? When he has a clean pocket and he can stand up tall and, make his throw, he really does have a good rifle on him, and he's got an accurate ball. He can make some impressive throws. What I'm starting to notice is in situations where he has to improvise a little bit, look, his launch angle is not great. I mean, he has to throw over guys, which just inherently throws off his throw quite a bit. I think there's a reason why. It seemed like there was a trend maybe 5 years ago, like, oh, yeah, short guys can play in the NFL, and we're starting to see that really dial back now. And we're really starting to see, I see why most quarterbacks are 6'2" or higher, because it's easy to impact their throw. And I think that's a bit of what we're seeing with Van Buren. That being said, hey, look, arm talent's undeniable. And he will probably get a chance to compete with Colin Hurley to be the starter next year. But mind you, in this day and age of the transfer portal, it's going to be Colin Hurley versus Michael Van Buren versus whoever is the top name in the portal that year.
Yeah.
Because I know 2026 LSU does not have a quarterback yet. They're recruiting some guys, but it's really that 2027 class for LSU. The names out there are just elite for 2027. So you got to find a bridge to get you there.
Yeah, and they're out there in the transfer portal every single year. Preston, we appreciate some time. Thanks so much, man. Have a great weekend.
All right, talk to you soon.
Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. All your LSU football coverage, all your recruiting. Preston and the team over there at TigerBait got you covered. Take a time out. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers, talking LSU and Alabama this weekend. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. How about 3 years of complimentary maintenance? How about 3 years of complimentary valet maintenance? How about a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty? All that is possible over at Genesis of Baton Rouge. When I say luxury vehicle, when you think luxury vehicles, you should think Genesis. And when you think luxury vehicles, don't automatically go, well, I'm priced out. You may not be. You won't know until you find out. You can start your process at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Go by the store. It's at Airline at PQ across from Women's Hospital. Chat with one of their brand ambassadors. They're great. They will help you through the process from start to finish. You'll never feel like a customer. You'll never feel like you're getting upsold. You're never going to feel like there are people swarming you trying to get your commission. You'll feel like a guest. And at the end, you'll feel like you made the right decision. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Find the entire inventory online, GenesisofBatonRouge.com, GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Beef. LSU and Alabama tonight, 7 o'clock at the box. You can listen over on our sister station, Eagle 98.1, first pitch again at 7 o'clock. That means pregame fires up at 6:30. It'll be the voice of the Tigers, Chris Blair, from high atop Alec Box Stadium, Skip Bertman Field. He's good enough to give us a little time here on this game day. Chris, how are you?
I'm great, man. Great. Ready to start another weekend and forget about last weekend.
Yeah, last weekend needs some forgetting. Just one of those weekends, just couldn't get anything going offensively. It had to be frustrating, no?
Yeah, I mean, you could sense it. I mean, you know, the number that stands out to me is 38 fly ball outs, 17 ground outs. And that was kind of the story of the weekend. I mean, it was the infield handling pop outs. It was the outfield. You know, Stephen Milam had the one home run for the Tigers over the weekend. There were a handful of extra base hits, but again, when you look at it offensively, it was just, you know, I think an outlier. I mean, based on what we had seen, you know, in every game up until that point, a team that was averaging 8 or 9 runs a game and just struggled. And some of the, you know, you got to tip your hat to Auburn. You know, I told some people earlier this week, we didn't have the greatest vantage point from behind the plate. We were kind of up the first base line now with the renovations at Plainsman Park. But I will say Auburn did a very good job. Their starters as well as their relievers of just about every pitch was low. I mean, they didn't leave a lot up. And, you know, again, there were a lot of strikes called at the knees. There were a lot of balls that were called below the knees. And, you know, I think some of that along with the wonky kind of dimensions of that park, you know, I think kind of led the wrong angle of attack. And you just saw a lot of balls go up in the air. And again, Auburn was able to take care of it. But I think the silver lining, if there was one, was the pitching staff.
Yeah.
And I think you saw some guys that, you know, Jay's been saying for weeks and now going into months that, you know, we need these guys to step up. We need some, you know, some guys to join the Zach Cowens and the Kason Evans to be a little more reliable. And, you know, I think, you know, a handful of guys you saw over the weekend, game 1 and game 2, you saw again, you know, in the midweek this week, albeit against McNeese, but a very good team. And I think you got back-to-back good outings.
Yeah, Maverick Rizzi stands out there. He was dominant on Tuesday. What did you see from your vantage point from that one?
Again, I thought McNeese, looked pretty good. And, from an offensive standpoint, they won 12 games in a row. And, as Jay said, I think they're pretty much, unless the wheels fall off, going to be a, at-large regional team. It was good to see William Smith. I thought he pitched very well. I didn't know how long they were going to let him go. I had a sense they wanted to, use a number of guys because, again, they're still trying to find those candidates that they can rely on the weekend. And there's still a part of me that thinks, Williams going to be part of the mix every weekend. But overall, I thought, the pitching staff did an excellent job. And, again, it's those same names that we talked about, Connor Ware, Connor Benj, Jacob Myers, Maverick Rizzi. Myers is a guy that Jay tells time and time again, he's the only surefire candidate when you look at this team that with the skill set should be playing in a major league uniform in a couple of years. He's just got to work on his consistency. But I think, Jared Jones also set the tone offensively. I mean, a 2-run bomb after he struggled over the weekend with 1 base hit, 6 strikeouts. I thought he got it started and everybody else kind of followed suit. And that's the kind of the LSU offense that I think we're all accustomed to. And frankly, it's the offense I think we'll see the majority of the final 5 weekends in SEC play. Yeah,
I went over LSU's SEC stats earlier this week on the show. And you got Jared Jones hitting 254 with 1 homer in league games. Stephen Milam's hitting 260 through 15 league games. I have a strong suspicion those 2 guys will not hit that over the last 15 league games. And you consider the fact that LSU's 10-5 right now and that those 2 guys haven't necessarily been as good as they can be. That's a pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we said Monday night on Jay's show, or at least what I said. I mean, yeah, you hate coming off a sweep against anybody, home or away in SEC play. And, I kind of likened it to showing up at Auburn last week. I mean, you look at Auburn going into the weekend, you're like, oh, wow, this is a 6-6, 500 team. And then you realize, well, they've won 3 of their first 4 series, but they got swept against a pretty good Georgia team. So, those numbers are a little deceiving that early in the SEC race. And when you look at what LSU has done, they're first in doubles in the SEC. I think they're second in batting average. They're near the top in so many different categories, both offensively and, from a pitching standpoint. You look at their record, you look at their wins, you realize that 3 of the first 5 weekend series in the SEC play were on the road. Now, out of the final 5 weeks, 3 of those are going to be back at the box, including this weekend and again against Tennessee. And then your road trips are a resurging Texas A&M team. And then you finish the year against South Carolina, who obviously has struggled. I mean, I don't think there's any reason to even look for a panic button. I mean, this team is in a very good spot where they are right now. And as I said, I like them when they're back at the box, regardless of who they're playing. And based on the talent they have with those guys you mentioned, who we kind of have an inkling will get better, as we saw last year towards the back end of the season, we're in fine shape. Everything's A-okay with LSU baseball.
And Cade Anderson's line was bad last week. I didn't think his outing was that bad. 1 ground ball doesn't get made, a play doesn't get made, and all of a sudden it looks a little bit worse. But your thoughts on Cade last week and then coming back into a start at home tonight?
I mean, first off, I'll say again, the Auburn team coming in offensively, I thought was really their strong suit. I mean, I think their pitching staff was somewhere 11th or 12th in the SEC in team ERA. Now, credit Samuel Dutton. I thought he pitched his fanny off in game 1 for good reason. Sometimes the emotion can go the opposite way, but it didn't for him for whatever reason. But offensively, I think Auburn's a very good team. I mean, they've got some really good guys. I mean, you talk about Ike Irish, a veteran player. Cooper McMurray seems like he's been playing for 8 years. And then those 3 freshmen they have, I think, are candidates for Freshman of the Year, along with Derek Curiel in Rembert, Terrell, and Fraley, the catcher. So, I thought Cade Anderson, battled against a very good lineup. And as you said, you handle that ground ball at third base, that's a double play probably, and you're out of the inning. At worst, it's the second out of the inning. But instead, you load the bases for Ike Irish, and, he clears the bases with a triple.
And look, Irish and McMurray were great all weekend. When they came up in a big spot, they pumped a double in the gap, hit it off the wall. That's what you need. And it just takes one swing, and all of a sudden you can start to do that. And we saw LSU do it the majority of the season. I'm kind of expecting to see it this week. And I like the Tigers this week. And how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I look at Alabama, and I look at a team that obviously has a very good shortstop, one of the best players in the league, and LeBron. But then you start looking statistically, and you kind of got to look very closely to see, the UA for the University of Alabama in, individual categories as well as, team categories. And I also think, every baseball team wants to get to the bullpen early. I mean, there's obviously a reason teams roll out a starter. I know Alabama, it appears, is going to kind of backload their typical weekend rotation, but that's fine because there's only been one pitcher so far for Alabama and SEC play throw a pitch in the fifth inning. And that was last week in Game 2 against Mississippi State in the one win they got against the Bulldogs. So, I think, again, I think it was an outlier offensively going 4 for 27, with runners in scoring position. That's not what this team has done all season. And so for that reason, I think they'll be able to get to the bullpen early against Alabama and be able to create pressure. That's the other thing they didn't do at Auburn. With all of the hits they had, which weren't a ton, it were spread out over 27 innings. And, you've seen an LSU team this year that's a lot more aggressive, stealing bases. They put the hit and run on. They'll double steal. They'll sacrifice. They'll, suicide squeeze, safety squeeze. But, when you're not applying pressure on a defense, it's tough. And I think they have the opportunity to do it against Alabama. And I think because the offense will get back to what we're accustomed to, I like the Tigers in all three games.
Bit of a cascading schedule this weekend, 7 o'clock Thursday, 6 o'clock Friday, 5 o'clock Saturday. You can listen to them all on our sister station, Eagle 98.1, or anywhere your affiliate is in the LSU Sports Radio Network. Chris Blair will be on the call. Thanks, man. Have a good weekend.
You got it, man. As Jim Hawthorne the Great always said, TV runs our life, man. And that's why we got the schedule this weekend. That's
exactly right. We'll be at the box all weekend long. So, Chris, appreciate a little bit of time here on this Thursday. Just kind of putting a bow, because I'm going to do a little bit of football here in the next segment on LSU baseball tonight. If there's a roadmap for tonight that's really realistic, I'm not painting anything crazy here. LSU needs to first have Cade Anderson come out and hang some zeros. I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect Cade Anderson to go out there and go 6 innings of 2-run baseball tonight. And if he does that, 6 innings of 2-run baseball, your offense over the course of that 6 innings should be able to score when Alabama's pitching off. This is not an elite Alabama pitching staff to begin with, and you ought to be able to score on a guy that has one college start to his name in his career. And if you can do that, and you can hang 5, 6, 7 runs up there, and you can get it to 7-2 or so, you're going to put Alabama in a position where they're going to take him out. Well, he's not going to throw that many pitches anyway, only threw 50, which was the season high last weekend. You get him out of the game, you're going to force them to go a little bit down the line on their bullpen. They're losing, Anderson's dealing. They're not going to be able to just go with their studs out of the bullpen. So at that point, you should be able to separate. And if you can do that, you won't have to use Cowan, Evans, and you might be able to get to the finish line without him. Then you're loaded for bear the next 2 games with your 2 best bullpen bullets. That's the ideal scenario for LSU tonight. Now, I can paint you the horror picture, too. You go out there and Anderson doesn't really have it, and you got to go to Cowan in a 1-1 game. Well, I guess if Anderson doesn't have it, in a 4-4 game in the 4th inning, and you burn him, and then the offense goes in the deep freezer, and then all of a sudden you're struggling. That's why the first point of a weekend, the first data point is Anderson's got to go. That's such an advantage to have your ace go out there and get it done. And Alabama doesn't have that opportunity tonight because the guy they're throwing isn't a starting pitcher. So you're really, really in an advantage spot tonight, but that puts some heat on you to go take care of it and win the game. If LSU wins tonight, you can feel pretty good about the rest of the weekend. You lose tonight, it's a little bit of a gut check time. So we'll see. There's 15 games to go. Nobody's planting any flags anywhere. Nothing's in cement. But tonight's a big game for LSU. You need to go out there and take care of their business in the ball game tonight. 7 o'clock, first pitch from the box. All right, we'll come back. We had a chance to chat with Caleb Jackson today. He talked about why he's not in the transfer portal and what he needs to improve on, and I've got thoughts on where he sits in this running back hierarchy in Baton Rouge. We'll do that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Whenever I say remodel, you might think, oh, that's a huge project, going to cost a fortune, going to take forever, have to leave my home. Well, that stuff can happen, but that's not really what we're talking about here. And to further that point, let's just talk about something simple like a tub to shower conversion. That's not massively expensive. That's not super invasive. That's not super time consuming. It's a simple process that can be done if your bathtub is not used, if it's old and dingy, if it's not functional. You take that bathtub out, put in a glass walk-in shower. It changes the aesthetic, changes the functionality of your bathroom, adds value to your home. David Duvall and his team can help you with it every step of the way. They handle everything. You don't call him and then call the guy to handle this part, and this guy handles the floor. And one contractor, one call. It's One Bath and Closets. Find them online at onebathandclosets.com. Get that free consultation and get that process started today. It's One Bath and Closets. Find them online, onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Beef. If I had asked most LSU fans to give me one name in January you thought had a real chance to go into the transfer portal, maybe in December, I think a lot of them would have probably said Caleb Jackson. Jackson comes in as a 4-star recruit, really flashes a little bit as a freshman. You all know the highlight from Mississippi State where he trucks the guy, got loose on some kickoff returns as well. Was not a feature part of the offense by any stretch of the imagination 2 years ago in an offense that was high-flying with Jaden Daniels. But he's big, fast, strong, 4-star recruit, now coming into his sophomore year. That's a guy that should be a big piece to the offense. And Caleb Jackson ran for 150 yards and no touchdowns last year. That is not a big piece of the offense at all. And you feel like with Harlan Berry, the number one running back in the country, coming in, and Caden Durham as a freshman beating him out, and it's like that's a guy who's going to head elsewhere to play his college football. And that didn't happen in the early transfer portal window. And now the transfer portal is open again, and it hasn't happened yet. And we got a chance to sit down and chat with Caleb Jackson today, the assembled media. And Wilson Alexander from The Advocate straight up asked him, are you going to go in the transfer portal? And this is what it sounded like.
But just to make it clear, the portal's open, but you're not going in?
No, I'm not going in.
That's pretty direct. No, I'm not going in. So we dove a little deeper with Caleb and talked to him about why and talked to him about what his goals are. And the why of it was a really powerful answer. Y'all know his backstory. He's from Baton Rouge, went to Liberty High, and I learned some more about his backstory, and I think you will hear, talking about why he didn't decide to just pick up and go somewhere else.
My parents weren't blessed. My mom has 4 kids, just her by herself. She's the hardest working woman I've ever met in my life. She didn't give up. She didn't resort to anything else to take her with the stress. She didn't do all that. She worked and worked to put me in this position where I can finally take care of her and my little siblings and my future family. So that's my role model. My mother, just to not giving up and stuff like that. Because my family is from here, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So having them in my circle at all times is always amazing. Having to be able to go home, talk to my mom, have to talk to my grandma, have to talk to my father, and all that type of stuff. It really sets my head straight, and makes me want to go harder just for them, just so I can do it in my home state. As a kid from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, went to school down the street. You know what I'm saying? That played an impact when we wanted to stay here and just keep going.
Look, I don't have a problem with players transferring. If you were an LSU fan that has a significant issue with the transfer portal, it's kind of hard to battle that when you got Burrow, Daniels, and Skeens and White, Angel Reese. Like, it's been pretty good to LSU. So to sit here and say everybody that transfers, what a quitter, man. Well, you're calling Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels quitters. You think Paul Skeens just quit on the Air Force Academy? I don't think so. But in the same breath, I can very much admire a young person who takes that kind of a stand. Says, look, my mom has busted her tail my whole life to give me opportunity, and she never quit. So I'm not going to quit. And that's an admirable stance because it's really easy to pick up and do something else. Really easy. Sometimes it's the right thing to do. But when you stick it out, I'm going to give you a little bit of praise there. And I thought that was a phenomenal answer from a young man. And again, that soundbite where he says, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I want to do it for my home city, my home state, like that still does matter. I think there are some cynical people that are fans in collegiate athletics that go, it's only money. All anybody cares about is money. I don't know what Caleb Jackson's NIL deals are, but I can tell you that's a guy who just said, like, I want to do it for my home city. I want to do it for my home state. That is still important to a lot of players that play. Not all of them. I'm not that naive, but there is a percentage that absolutely cares about that kind of thing. And Caleb Jackson is obviously that. So for now, the question is not like, are you going to leave? Because he's not. The question is, how do you get better? How do you become an impact back? Josh Williams carries are now available. Harlem Berry's coming on. JT Lindsey's coming on. But Caleb Jackson's a little different back. And so we asked him, like, what are your goals? How do you crack into this lineup?
Just to be more of an overall back, better at pass protection first and foremost. Short down and distance, I wanted to be better in that, not getting denied at the goal line. What else? Be a third down back where I can get out the backfield, catch passes, all that type of stuff. And, of course, just run the ball, be explosive, break tackles, and everything, all of the above.
That's a cliche answer, but okay. He understands what he's trying to get better at. And I am not ready to just close the book on Caleb Jackson. I've seen the flashes. You can have qualms with his vision at times, but if LSU can create an offensive line that creates some space and lets him get ahead of steam and lets him get to the second level, I still think he's a big problem for SEC defenses. He told us today that he played last year at 235 pounds. He's now cut that back to his freshman weight of 225. He's back down 10 pounds. I don't think he's lost any of the strength he had. And he said he felt like he could still get up to straight line speed and run as fast as he ever could at 235. He didn't feel like he could change directions as quickly at 235. So you drop the 10 pounds. He feels lighter on his feet. He feels more agile. He feels like he can be a more dynamic running back at that weight. Caden Durham's the starter. He deserves the football. He's got great speed. He's got great vision, great instincts, great ability to make people miss. South Carolina game was phenomenal this past year. Like, he's the lead back. And Harlem Berry's got to touch the ball. But what I like about Harlem Berry and Caleb Jackson in the same backfield, they're completely opposite. Harlem Berry's 185. He's 40 pounds lighter than Caleb Jackson. So if you need somebody to get outside, be real fluid with the football, make a corner miss, catch it out of the backfield, all those kind of things, third downs, like, Harlem Berry's well-positioned to do that. You need a guy to run at a tired defense. You need a guy to hit the hole 1,000 miles an hour at 225 pounds. You need a guy that's the most physical presence you've got in that backfield. Caleb Jackson brings all that. And I'm not ruling out another year where he runs for 150 yards. We just saw one. But I feel like there's a pretty good chance that Caleb Jackson kind of emerges here as a more productive threat than that. I would suggest closer to 400 or 500 yards from 0 touchdowns to 4 or 5. I don't think he's going to be featured in the offense. I thought that at this time last year. I thought at this time last year, Caleb Jackson's going to be one of the most dynamic runners in the Southeastern Conference. He's going to be a bell cow back for LSU. I absolutely felt that way. I don't really feel that way now. But I also don't feel the way of, this guy's a sophomore, ran for 150 yards and no touchdowns. Well, tell him, go to Southeastern. I don't feel like that at all. I feel like there's more to his story to be written at LSU. Got 2 years in, got a great relationship with Frank Wilson, great relationship with Josh Williams, great relationship with Caden Durham. He's got some mentors that are older than him, and I think he's doing it for the right reasons. And I think there's a chance that Caleb Jackson really helps this LSU team moving forward. I thought our conversation with him today was excellent. I'll have a piece in the coming days on LouisianaSports.net that's got more quotes than that from Caleb Jackson. But enlightening chat with the junior-to-be from Liberty High right here in Baton Rouge. If you are looking for, what was I about to say? Oh, there we go. That's one of those where you're on live radio and your brain just shuts off for like 3 seconds. If you're looking for LSU content, go to Hunt on LSU on YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. And that's Hunt on LSU. It used to just be on YouTube. Now, wherever you find your podcast, it's all football. So if you're just looking for football this time of year, that can be a little bit scarce. Go to Hunt on LSU. You can find our football all year long. And I can tell you, go to Hunt on Saints. It's draft week. I gave my thoughts earlier today on the Saints and what I think they could do and should do in the draft. Did that, and you can find that at Hunt on Saints as well. So now that my brain is back and functioning after our 3-second hiccup there, we'll go ahead and go to break, come back and close out the week for us here on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Insurance, not a lot of fun to talk about. I get it. Did it for 7 years. Can be monotonous, can be detailed, can be expensive, can be disappointing. I get it all. But you need to trust your insurance broker. If in the past you've just tossed out your insurance for bid, taken all the quotes, looked at the lowest premium, pointed to it and said, "You're my broker." That's one way to do it, but I would highly recommend you think about doing it another way. Trusting your broker to be part of your organization, giving them the information that they need, and arming them with the tools to go to the marketplace, make sure that your program is placed in the right spot with the right carrier at the right price with the right claims management so that you're well protected when that issue arises, whatever it is. Hurricane, car accident, cyber attack, lawsuit, whatever it is. Make sure your insurance is ready to respond. And the Highland Insurance Group will help you out with that. Jonathan Carbo and his team are phenomenal to work with. Find them at HighlandIG.com. They're based right here in Baton Rouge. They can help you out statewide. It's the Highland Insurance Group. Find them at HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Our Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Beef. I'll put this very, very simply. Some of the best beef in the world is right here in our backyard in Baton Rouge, just 35 minutes up the road in Ethel. Sean Sagrera has got a hidden gem in Sagrera's Farms. It's not going to be hidden for much longer because I'm telling you about it every single Thursday. If you love to get on the grill, love steaks, love burgers, just love prime beef, there's none better than Sagrera Farms. I know there are probably a lot of you that have gone wherever you usually go to get that beef and you've cooked your steak and you're going, that's just not a great piece of meat. That'll never happen when you go to Sagrera Farms because they've got a scientific process that they've nailed down, and they mate the best in animals and they get a consistent product. It's incredible marbling, incredible tenderness, flavor, and you can go up to Sagrera Farms and check it out before you buy it. They'll seal it up, slice it, send it home with you, and you'll have a freezer full. Fillets, ribeyes, strips, flank steaks, ground beef. They sell it by the whole cow or the side. Give Sean a call, 719-1723. Their beef is aged 45 days, raised on grass, finished on grain. It's an premium product. It is prime Angus beef. It is Sagrera Farms. Give Sean a call, 719-1723. Sagrera Farms brings you our Thursday shows each and every week. Well, as y'all know, on my Twitter feed, you got a lot of Chicago sports news because I'm a big Cubs guy. Y'all are well aware of that. And I was just scrolling through the old Twitter feed in the break and caught a marquee sports interview with new Bears defensive coordinator Dennis Allen. Jordan,
yes.
It's just a beautiful thing. Are you pulling for Dennis in Chicago? There are a lot of Bears fans that want him to bring back the 85 Bears, Monsters of the Midway.
Well, Bears fans should be very happy. I know, it's me saying this. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
You turned over a new leaf.
You know,
oh, my goodness.
I had to go to Dennis Allen rehab. You know, I had to get my mentality back together. You know, I think.
Are you willing to say that you may have crossed the line on Dennis a time or two?
Multiple times. You know, I'm a habitual line crosser, okay? But, you know, you got to let bygones be bygones. So Dennis is out of my hair, so I hope the best for Dennis. And honestly, Bears fans, you should be happy.
Are you going to say that about Derek Carr when he leaves?
Oh, no. Never. Unless he's like, I'm giving away $2 million to some charity in New Orleans. He going to have to do something like that. Other than that, no.
How about Mickey Loomis?
No, Mickey better hope. You know, I'm not even going to say this. It's live radio.
We don't need to cross the line again. We're turning over a new leaf, as you said.
You're right.
Just trying to see where we are on the Saints hierarchy. It appears that those that are still screwing up.
Oh, no.
It's those hurt worse than the folks that are not screwing up here anymore. So I'm proud of you for growing up there, Jordan. That's
great.
Great.
Hon, I had to.
I'm not planning on doing that anytime soon. All right, let's play some Take It or Leave It.
Okay.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
All right. So we're going to start off with, I guess you can say this is some good news. So Milwaukee Bucks star Damian Lillard has been cleared in just 3 weeks of his deep vein thrombosis and is no longer on blood-thinning medication. The doctors told Bucks officials the speed of Lillard's recovery has never been seen before. Never been seen before.
Okay.
Because of his early treatment, dedication specialist, blah, blah, blah. Is Damian Lillard a superhuman? Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave it, but he's a young guy in really good shape, and he's got the best doctors that exist. So that combination generally leads to some pretty good stuff medically. So we've seen a lot of pro athletes kind of beat the standard industry with the amount of rehab that they can handle. So I'm thrilled. Damian Lillard's an awesome player, and they got a really good team, and I'll watch them in the playoffs. It's just a more interesting playoffs when he's playing. So shout out to him.
Never been seen before. That's crazy. So now we're going to have a little fun. So Aaron Rodgers, the man himself, isn't thrilled by the way, I guess, how his Jets tenure ended.
Okay.
The veteran quarterback appeared on Pat McAfee's show today. It didn't feel respected enough when meeting with the new head coach, Aaron Glenn. So here's the quote. Here we go. This is where it gets real good. Listen, that was an interesting 2 years to say the least. I figured when I flew across the country on my dime, there would be a conversation. The confusing thing to me is I went there to meet with the coach. We start talking. He runs out the room. I'm like, that's strange. He then comes back with the GM, and I'm like, all right. So we sit down and to think we're going to have a long conversation. And 20 seconds go, Glenn goes, you sure you want to play football? I said, yes. And he said, well, we're going in a different direction. Do you feel like Aaron Rodgers did he deserve that disrespect? I'll say that. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it. He doesn't deserve that disrespect. I just don't believe that story happened. I don't believe that a Hall of Fame quarterback flew in to see the Jets, and Aaron Glenn said, you want to play football? And he said, yes. And he goes, well, we're not taking you. I just don't think that's how that conversation went. I think Aaron Rodgers is an interesting cat. He's cut from a different cloth. And while he's a free agent, I don't feel like he's holding any organization hostage. If he's a free agent, he can do whatever he wants.
Yes.
It's the guys who are under contract that start pouting and demanding trades and hold. That's the kind of stuff that gets tough for fans to swallow. Right now, he can do whatever it is he wants, and I don't feel like a lot of Jets fans are clamoring to get him back. I think they're ready to move on. It's It feels like Aaron Rodgers is going to play for Pittsburgh, but I would be surprised 0% if in 2 days you heard Aaron Rodgers go, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because his body is not what it was. You're going to probably go to a place that's difficult to win. It's just so many things can go wrong. And this is kind of like the Maneri thing that we had earlier today where I was talking about. It's like Paul Maneri doesn't need to coach college baseball anymore. He can do it if he wants to. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to play NFL quarterback anymore. He can if he wants to, but he doesn't need to do that. And now that he's not under contract, it's like, whatever. Do whatever it is that you feel like you need to do. So,
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Aaron Rodgers, like you said, retires and then it's like, yeah, I'm running for president. That's just some Aaron Rodgers stuff.
I thought Stephen A. was running for president.
That would be his vice president. Aaron Rodgers and Stephen A. That's the go-to.
I don't talk a lot of politics on this show. I don't think they're going to get my vote. The Stephen A. Aaron Rodgers ticket, that one might be tough for me to. I don't know who's running against him, so I can't promise you where my vote's going to go, but I don't feel like that's going to be right where I
duo. Well, what if it was Stephen A. versus Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, at this point, that's not even crazy. That's not even crazy. Anybody can run for president. Yeah. Who's to blame for this? Yeah. Schwarzenegger. He runs for governor of California, and then all of a sudden, anybody can do anything.
Anybody can do it.
Anybody can do anything. So that's where we are, and I guess that's where we'll leave it here on this Thursday. We are taking the day off as a station, except Jordan. He's got to work because Live at Lunch will do their show from Rapino's tomorrow from 11 to 1. But everybody else will be off tomorrow on Good Friday, and then I'm going to be out next week. Taylor will be in my chair, and so he'll pilot it. I'm planning on hopping on the show remotely on Friday to talk a little LSU and Tennessee baseball. I will be coming back on Friday, actually a day early from the beach trip because I want to go cover that series of Tigers and Balls. So by the time I come back, theoretically, in this chair, LSU is going to have played 6 SEC games at home, and we'll have a really different conversation than the one we're having right now. But as I've told you for the last 2 hours, like, this is a big weekend for LSU, as they're all going to be, and tonight's a big game for LSU. It's kind of on the less end of that spectrum for Alabama tonight because they're pitching off against an ace on the road against a top 15, top 10 team. But it's just one of those deals where you have such a huge advantage tonight that shrinks and goes away over the course of 2 days. LSU needs to capitalize on that, so let's hope they do that. The Saints will also make their draft pick next week, so I'll be able to react to that when I get back as well. If you missed any of today's show, you can catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. That always helps us get our content in front of as many folks as we possibly can. We appreciate y'all's help with all of that. I opened the show today with just a little bit of conversation about LSU and Alabama. Then I went through the Saints NFL draft. You can find that on YouTube at Hunt on Saints. Joe Healy previewed the SEC weekend to come. We talked Lee Corso's retirement. Preston Guy on some LSU football. Chris Blair on baseball. He'll be on the call tonight. And then we chatted about Caleb Jackson in our conversation today. If you missed any of it, wherever you find your sound, go check that out. Matt is going to drive you home on After Further Review this evening. I'm out of here. I'll watch some baseball tonight, and we are leaving on Saturday. So hope Taylor has a great week. Hope you all have a great Easter holiday. And I'm back in a week and change on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.